Welcome to NUFC Matters. I'm Steve Wraith.
And I'm Malcolm MacDonald.
And tonight we've got a very special guest with us, the man himself, John Gibson.
Cheers. Welcome, John, indeed.
Lads, welcome. Good to see you. Let's talk about the Norwich game first. The Norwich debacle. Malcolm, Malcolm, you predicted a draw. I went for a narrow defeat. 3-1 defeat at Norwich. It doesn't sound too bad. You know, they're the new team coming up, but let's face it. It was a mauling.
It was, and I've not witnessed such awful defending from a side as I did Newcastle last weekend, and everybody just seemed to be at complete sixes and sevens. There was no structure, there was no organisation, and I thought, what on earth has been going on these last few days to cause this, where simple defending basics just flew out the window on Saturday, and I'll be quite honest, it frightened me. It frightened me to see it.
What about the forward line, John? I mean, Joe Linton's
what
up
about
there.
The forward line?
I mean, I've got to be honest, the Arsenal game I boycotted, obviously watched it on the television.
Yeah.
You know, some flashes there from Joe Linton, but when you're used to seeing Perez and Rondon in particular holding the ball up, we've now gone to Joe Linton, a Brazilian who's cost £40 million, looks out of his depth.
Well, the two up front are £61 million, and they both look out their depth at the moment.
Almiron as well.
Yeah, it is frightening. The one thing Joe Linton isn't, and I'm trying desperately to be fair, it's only 2 games in. Let us wait and see if this continues. Different for Almiron, he's played a dozen games now. But Joe Linton, he doesn't look as number 9 to me. He's certainly not a goal scorer like this fellow or like Shearer. Absolutely no way that he's going to be that. He's got some good touches, he's got possibilities, but I don't know that he's a line leader. And if you think if the Newcastle squad at the moment, there's only one line leader, Carroll, and he's never fit. Yeah. So there's immediate problems. And as I say, Almiron playing alongside him is getting worse by the moment.
Mal, I think the strange thing for me was the midfield. The week before, obviously everyone was scratching their head because there wasn't a midfielder on the bench. You know, it was full of defenders.
Strange that, wasn't it?
Strange. And we were talking last week about Key wasn't featured. Colback had featured all the way through pre-season. He wasn't on the bench, but Key was probably the biggest surprise. And then it was almost like a reaction from Bruce. Suddenly Key wasn't just in the squad, he was in the starting lineup, and Longstaff was dropped with the line that he was going to protect. He wanted to protect Longstaff. Well, you know, if you're going to protect Longstaff when he's coming back from an injury, why was he playing in the first game? A lot of mixed messages coming out of there.
A lot of mixed messages, and I just wonder, has knee-jerk reaction already started in the way that the team's being selected?
And how bad was Key, by the way?
Yeah.
He was dreadful.
Yeah.
He was.
Really, we didn't know he was on the field. He was on the team sheet, but not necessarily on the field.
Yeah, and it really is quite worrying. I think that there doesn't seem to be just a simple selection that is made from the players who are the best. And it's almost as if that Steve Bruce and his coaches, his aides and what have you, it's as if they don't really know. They haven't got to know the players well enough yet, and they should know them by now because they've had a whole number of weeks of pre-season training with matches, and you get it all sorted out in that time. But I just get the feeling that it's all sort of hit and miss at the
what
moment.
Infuriated me, lads, about that game, and I mentioned it before we went down. When you look at our early fixture list, This was the match we had to
Yeah.
get something. Without a shadow of the missed opportunity was huge. You start with Arsenal, you've got Spurs next.
Yeah.
We get hammered, we get tongued at Norwich. We're terrified now about Spurs because what could happen down there. And Norwich was an opportunity. We thought we missed an opportunity last season when we lost to a North London team on the first day. We then went down to a newly promoted side, just as we've done this year, Cardiff.
Yeah.
And we got a note. We ought to have won. Kennedy missed a penalty in the 96th minute. But we saw that as a mixed opportunity. We then went on a run of 10 games without a win. This time, we got absolutely taken to bits by Norwich. And when you think of what's to come,
Yes.
then that was a massive, massive miss.
Sure, they're a good footballing side, Norwich. They showed that in the opening game of the season. But whilst Norwich was scoring 3 goals against Newcastle, Newcastle never had a shot at goal. The first shot at goal was when Shelby scored in the 96th minute.
One miss from Joe Linton. I remember that, and I mean,
Yes.
he should have buried it. You would have put
Yeah.
that in the back of the net.
The Swedish boy had a huge miss
Kraft as well, yeah.
Which
Again,
was
another
desperate.
player.
Right, but
Looked
that
out to be
misses. But there's
Far on target.
yes, there's nobody just prepared to
back.
really take charge of this of that situation when the ball suddenly is there in the penalty area and you just go bang. You know, I go back to the Arsenal game, that chance that Joe Linton had, and it was almost when he was just through with the keeper to beat. It's almost as if his bottle went.
Yeah.
And I hope I'm wrong in what I'm thinking, but it certainly looked very suspicious to me that he got into that situation and panicked. What you've got to do is just bury it in the corners, or go for the roof of the net. But it was just a tame toe poke straight at the goalkeeper, and that's not Premiership, you know. And this is what's striking me, that there's too much in the Newcastle side that isn't Premiership quality, and if that is the case, they're going to get tanked week in, week out.
And we discussed this last week. It's the lack of organisation. The one thing that Rafa brought, he might not have brought free-flowing, entertaining football, but he brought organisation and defence.
Yes, yes.
And what we're now going to see is that midfield is letting the back forward down and showing the frailties of the likes of Lascelles, who has always been, been dubious to say the least. He's now he's frailties are wide open and for everybody to see.
Yeah, and the best defender in the club for me is Dummett. He's got a great defensive, out and out defender. I'm not even considering what else goes on in the game. I'm just talking about out and out defending, and he is the best. He's getting frustrated. When the best defender starts getting frustrated, you know that there's a whole mass of problems.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be simple in trying to sort it out.
Tactically, though, I think this is where Steve Bruce is getting it wrong.
Yeah.
Tactically, we're playing with 3 centre-halves who are narrow, wing-backs. I mean, the Swedish lad had a mare. And why was Manquillo out, who had done well in pre-season and against Arsenal? But we haven't got defenders there. Richie is not even a full-back. He's a winger who's being asked to play there.
Yeah.
So we're vulnerable out wide. We're playing 3 centre-halves narrow. I think he's got to go to a flat-back 4, move Dummett out to play orthodox left-back, which is exactly what he is, especially at Spurs. I think tactically we're wrong, and Steve Bruce has got to change it, and we're putting square pegs in round holes.
Moving away from the weekend's game, getting on to that the topic that we started with, Joe Linton and Almiron. For me, there's not 20 goals in both of them, never mind one.
Well, at the moment, there's no goals in either of them.
Exactly. What are we going to do? Who's going to get the goals that's going to get the kickstart Newcastle season?
Right. Brilliant question.
You mentioned earlier on about myself and Alan Shearer as proven goal scorers. There is one great similarity between Alan Shearer and I, and that is that when we cross the line into the penalty area, we are so nasty that nobody is going to stop either of us getting that final shot at goal in. And what I'm watching with Almiron and Joe Linton is they're too nice.
Yeah.
Almiron, he wants to please all his fellow players. Well, I used to upset them all.
Until you scored, and they were grateful,
Right.
of course.
Yeah, and then I'd stick it in the net, and they'd say, "Oh, right,
what a
okay,
good lad,
well,
what a good lad."
yeah." But Joe Linton and Almiron, they're getting the priorities wrong, and we've just talked about the back four, and then and then the midfield. Now, weren't the midfield a bit higgledy-piggledy and all over the place? Weren't they sitting back too much on the defence and not allowing them to get pushed up? And so the whole thing is actually coming down to a tactical hodgepodge that we've got. And we've got to look to Steve Bruce to get this sorted out, and very, very quickly. And if we can look ahead to the game on Sunday, we've got Tottenham Hotspur coming. Tottenham facing a side that's in tactical disarray will absolutely murder Newcastle.
The Premier League record's 9-0, Malcolm. Just it could
No,
go.
Newcastle aren't going to win 9-0.
Definitely not going to win 9-0. But the way that you feel at the moment about the team and the way that we're playing, it could really, John, be a mauling of that proportion. You hope not, but it could be.
You desperately hope not. We wouldn't even be talking about that with Rafa Benitez, would we?
No.
Can you imagine
No.
9-in with Rafa? But I mean, I don't expect that, but I do expect an absolute tonking. I'm afraid that is what I expect. And I just mentioned the strikers because we were, and I think it's very... Almiron is shown exactly what is wrong with Newcastle United now. He come here as a very attractive, free-running, free spirit type guy who excited the crowd over the first couple of games when he was here in January. But what he is now, he's like a loose colt who's running anywhere in the field and everywhere.
And he's enjoying it, but he's not achieving anything.
I don't
it's
think
just
now he is enjoying it, you know, Malcolm.
What?
I think he's lost. I think he's up.
Do you?
I
Yeah.
think he plays on the wide and he uses his pace and he gets down there, tries to cut in and have a ball into the box or try to finish. At the moment, he doesn't know what he's trying to do whatsoever.
Sure.
And confidence is nil.
I
He
certainly
started,
agree
he
on
doesn't
that.
get
He's
confidence
actually,
is nil.
in that front three or whatever system we're trying to play, he's actually now the senior member in that team by a few months because he was signed. He was signed in January, but you know his experience in the Premiership's fairly limited. He was playing alongside Perez and he was playing alongside Rondon, both seasoned Premiership players. Now he's in there as somebody who's had limited experience in the Premiership, expecting to play and score goals alongside a Brazilian young lad who's never been in the Premier League before, alongside Maxim, who looks as if he looks as quick as Wayne Faraday, but equally as talented. And for me, it all spells to a long dark season for Newcastle.
But we haven't got a natural physical presence in the penalty area.
No.
That is what Joe Linton's supposed to be, and size-wise, he could be.
He should be.
But it's not his game. There isn't a physical... I think he got bullied at Norwich. I think Joe Linton got bullied.
He went off very quickly, didn't he?
Oh, right. And it does worry me because I think heads will go down quickly. They did at Norwich, and my Jove, if Norwich gets a head going down, what might Spurs do?
Yeah.
I mean, Newcastle have faced the Golden Boot winner.
Yeah.
Alabang, they played for Arsenal and got the winner against
Yes,
us.
Aubameyang,
Then a guy that scores a hat-trick at Norwich, and now they face
Pookie.
Harry Kane. And by the way, forwards win games, as we know.
Yeah.
And they're winning games, and we haven't got finishes, and we don't win
right.
games.
And yet, if you actually look at what they're bringing to the side, Joe Linton, he looks a presence. Whether he's actually going to be one or not is entirely up to him. But he certainly looks the part. You've got Maximin wide, who is quick and tricky. You've got Almiron, who is an absolute flying machine. All the assets are there, and yet they look ragbaggish. They're not understanding what their assets are and how to get the very best out of them.
So you're saying this is Steve Bruce's fault then? he's supposed to.
He's got coaches as well, but
Yeah,
but they're
team.
not looking as if they're organised in such a way, because one of the ways to tell is to see how the back four integrate with the midfield as you move forward, and then how does the midfield integrate with the front guys, and you look for the movement. Not seeing it. I'm not seeing integration. I'm not seeing movement, and if you go 90 minutes without getting a shot in, you know there's a massive problem. Mm-hmm. There is a massive problem, because not only are they not achieving what they should be doing on the football field, but the whole mentality is wrong. When I went on a football field, what I looked to do was have 6 attempts in the first half, 6 attempts in the second half, and if I was only getting 3 or 4 attempts in, they might have been the slightest of chances, but nevertheless they were attempts. But I had to get 6 in, and if I got 4 in, I was absolutely livid with myself. They got none in against Norwich. They got none in, all 3 of them. But that was a that was a midfield player. So the 3 of them got nothing in at all. Did you see them upset with themselves? Because no. I didn't see them upset going, gee whiz, I've had an absolute stinker today. This ain't going to happen again. I didn't see that at all. It's almost as if they were too accepting of their own failure. That, for me, is so frightening and worrying. And if my finger, with great fickleness, is pointing towards Steve Bruce and his coaching setup, it's also taking in the whole of the playing squad as well, because you cannot go through 90 minutes of football and your forwards never have an attempt at goal. Yeah. You will not get anywhere like that. That's relegation written all over it.
So if we go into the Spurs game and we lose that, we then have a Carabao Cup game midweek against Leicester City at home.
Who did you see them at Chelsea? By heavens, that second half, they were frightening, Leicester.
And don't forget, really were. As Steve Bruce said, this is the year we're going to give the cups a go. If we've lost our first 3 Premier League games, are we still going to give the cups a go, do you think? Or is the Premier League suddenly a priority?
Well, we've suddenly got Steve Bruce has got himself in a right position now. Having gone for brownie points when he first arrived and wasn't well accepted by the crowd, in fact not accepted whatsoever, realised that and thought that I've got to play the cards, and we're all sick of the Geordie card, of course, because it's every interview, bless him, he's talking about being a Geordie. Yeah. Well, I happen to know that. But he also said, we'll go for the cups. Now, initially, as a statement, that's terrific, because if Newcastle don't win one of the domestic cups, then in the lifetime of young Newcastle United fans now, this club wins nothing. Yeah. Because they're not going to win the Premier League for an awful long time, and they're not going to win the Champions League, and they're not going to get in the Europa League at the moment. So they've got to win the domestic trophies. Now, therefore, the theory is absolutely brilliant, because they haven't had a go at the leagues. I think since Ashley come up, we got past the second round of the FA Cup.
I'm not sure.
We haven't done it. But the interesting thing is now, as you said, Steve, that if we have lost the first 3 games and everybody's more or less expecting us to lose at Spurs, it's not just a matter of then can we go out against Leicester and put out virtually the first team because of the 3 defeats, but couple of days later, 3 days later, we'll play Watford in what is one of the rare winnable games, apart from the fact Norwich was a winnable game.
They are struggling, aren't they?
We've got to go out against Watford and try to win. So
the game we lost 3-0 last year.
Does he have the guts then to put out his best side against Leicester, knowing that he's risking injuries, he's risking everything with Watford to come? or does he not? I think he's doomed, as they would say on Dad's Army, which either you do.
Yeah.
Because if he puts out his reserve side effectively on Wednesday, he'll be massacred by fans having give a pledge. Oh yeah, what's your word?
Sure.
You know, and if he doesn't, if he puts out the first team and they don't beat Leicester, whatever side Leicester put out, or worse, don't win against Watford, what then?
Okay, well, you two are Geordies. Does it really matter whether Steve Bruce is a Geordie or not? All Newcastle want is a manager who is going to put together a side that can actually win games, score goals, stay tight at the back, and get themselves up the league. Being a Geordie, for me, falling back on well, yeah, I'm a Geordie. I'm one of you guys. That's actually giving up before you've even started.
It's desperation.
I think
it doesn't bother me that he's a
really
Geordie.
do. He should be talking as a football manager, not as to where he comes from. And
it didn't bother Geordies that Malcolm was a Cockney when he was scoring 30 goals a season for us, or Les Ferdinand when he was along.
Exactly.
Absolutely. I think it's
That's
PR.
it.
I think it's a PR thing that the club almost seem to drive through the manager. And I think what the PR department at Newcastle should be doing is double checking that there's no skeletons in the closet. And I mean, for instance, he's always wanted to be Newcastle manager. But if you go back through the Chronicle archives, John, the paper that you've worked at with, over the years, James Hunter did an article when he took over the job at Sunderland, and the headline that James used and the byline that was used was, "I've never dreamed of managing Newcastle." So he's already setting himself up for a fall with things like that. And getting back to something else he said, it was about an hour after the game. Matthew Raisbeck on Radio Newcastle interviewed Steve Bruce after the game. He was obviously very disappointed and basically just said he would take it up with the players on Monday. They would start again on Monday. An hour later, the club releases a statement to say that they're in training on Sunday. Even that seemed to contradict whatever Bruce says seems to either be contradicted by something he said in the past or contradicted by somebody somewhere at the club. It's ridiculous.
Well, of course, Rafa, and I'm not keep going back to that, two things about Rafa. First of all, he wasn't a Geordie and the fans loved him to death, so that card doesn't have to be played. Secondly is, you would probably notice, and it frustrated journalists, Steve, it frustrated journalists, but Rafa was very cagey in what he said on the record. He virtually did the same interview. He had a losing interview and a winning interview, and he just poured them out at the end of the game.
Exactly.
And it didn't ask for any elaboration because it wasn't going to come.
No.
And then he hadn't left himself open to anything. Politically, he was a very, very clever and shrewd man. But if you've been to the clubs he's been to and won what he's won, you can't be like that. Steve is sometimes too, it sounds stupid, but too open for his own good. What he thinks here comes out of here. And sometimes you've got to pause between there and make certain that you're making sense and you're not tripping yourself up.
Sure.
And that happens.
But as Newcastle supporters, wouldn't the three of us like to think that after these two very poor opening results, that a lot of honesty and a lot of shouting has taken place in the dressing rooms between everybody, and that there's going to be a reaction? And I'm not so sure there is going to be a reaction come Sunday against Tottenham. I'm really not.
Well, what's interests me, Malcolm, is that Newcastle United, and I'm talking players here, I'm not talking, let's switch from managers, because players have got a lot to answer for. They're the people on the field. Their performance at Norwich was abysmal. They down-tooled, their heads dropped without a shadow of doubt. They're now fighting a great fight during the week. There will be this during the week. We were a disgrace. We accept total blame. We are going to have to stick together and fight back, and we'll show it the next game. And then the next game comes along and the heads drop. Newcastle United at the moment fight a good fight Monday to Friday, but they don't fight a good fight at the weekend.
Yeah, true. Very true.
Yeah, it's a good point, is that?
We've got a couple of questions on Twitter today. Jamie Swan says, the thoughts on Almiron predicament, what would be good? How can we get the best out of Almiron? That's what Jamie Swan's asking.
If it were down to me, I would, in Steve Bruce's shoes, I would say, right, Alan Shearer, come on, I want you to come up here for a day. I want you to work with this lad, or get me in for a day, just to work with a lad. Show him how to use his pace so that he isn't running across defenders. What he's actually doing is beating them. Mm-hmm. That's what he's got to do. That's what pace is for. Go and beat the opposition. Beat them for pace. That gets you into the space where, if the ball is there, you've got every chance of going and sticking it in the net. Joe Linton, got to make him a nasty sod, a real nasty piece of work, because he's not a fancy Dan Brazilian player. What he is he's a physical specimen who's got to go and use that physique, and he's got to start. I think I said this last week. Mm-hmm. He's got to go and knock centre halves all over the place, and he's not doing it. And until players play to their strengths, they're not playing. Yeah. And at the moment, we're looking at the back four. People aren't playing to their strengths. What they're doing is, instead of just saying, okay, I know what I've got to do and I'm going to do it and concentrate on getting it done, they're looking there going, well, what's he doing? Oh, what about here? Mm. And they're forgetting about themselves and what they need to do. And then in the middle of the park, it's a complete and utter shambles. It really is. And it's almost as if there's a bit of a war going on between one or two players in there that they're vying to come out on top. What you want is a midfield on top, not a midfield player to the sacrifice of everybody else.
Yeah, exactly. And probably somebody who's a very divisive figure in the dressing room as well, who Rafa wouldn't let anywhere near the first team last season. He's now dictating things in the centre of midfield again.
And
Shelby.
Yeah. And it's not the first time that we've seen this happen. And what happens is that ultimately the team falls apart. Yeah. And we're seeing that right from the start of the season. And unless Steve Bruce really stamps down on it, and he really does have to stamp down, he's got to fall out with people. He can't be nice in the dressing room at all. Yeah. He's got to go falling out with people, and he's got to say, if you don't do it properly, you're out. Mm-hmm. And it's as simple as that. And if he just says that, and when they don't do it, say, right, gone.
For me, in the dressing room, it looks like it's gone from a sergeant major's, corps to, a school holiday camp. That's what it looks like it's done, and it's shown on the pitch.
Yes,
John,
it is.
John, question for you. Two similar questions, really. One from Michael Quinn and one from Jimmy Dixon. They're both basically asking about the regime. Sorry, Wayne Wonder and Michael Quinn. When do you think, Mike Ashley's going to sell up? Do you see any light at the end of the tunnel, or do you think this is going to happen? Do you think we're on this merry-go-round for the next 10 years? I'll leave that question to you, John.
Please God that we're not on the merry-go-round for 10 years. I don't see any particular light at the tunnel. We've had 3 attempted takeovers, and I'm more cynical than I've ever been, both about certainly the last one, whether there was any seriousness in it, and whether Ashley has a willingness to sell this club, unless he sells it to somebody like Mansour that took over Man City, who's got so much money, he'll throw twice as much as Ashley wants at him, and he'll be quite happy then to get the hell out of it. Yeah. But he wants to make so much money out of Newcastle United, he's not prepared to walk away. He's taken huge hits right across his business empire, from Debenhams to everywhere else. He's taken hit after hit after hit after hit, and that makes it less and less likely that he'll take a hit on Newcastle, that he'll only sell it at top price. And I come back to what I've said regularly. This man doesn't live in Newcastle. Everybody else before him, from John Hall backwards through Freddie Shepherd to Lord Westwood to McKeague, they all lived on the doorstep. And the moment they come out the house in the morning to go anywhere, they were tackled by fans in the street saying, this is a disgrace, that's a disgrace, what are you going to do about it, etc., etc. They had to pay a cost and be sharp. He lives down there. If he doesn't helicopter in for a match on a Saturday. He just goes to the training ground once every 6 months and back out.
When he's invited.
When he's invited, then he isn't going to face the wrath. He knows it happens, but he doesn't have to face it. And he will sit there quite easily and allow this to happen. It has become an absolute despair for me. I'm absolutely cynical. I don't want to read tomorrow morning that somebody else is in, because the minute we hear about it, it's dead in the water. I don't want to hear a thing till it's completed, and I'm not expecting it to complete. I'm at the stage of my life when I was around early in the 50s as a kid. We won the cup 3 times in 5 years. When I was around 60s as a reporter, we won the European Fez Cup. Since then, absolutely nothing. I'm sitting here with one foot in the grave, and I'm wanting, before my life's up, to see Newcastle win something, a meaningful trophy, not the second division.
Steve Bruce will get you a cup, don't you worry.
The Northumberland Senior Cup might have to go to extra time for it to win that. But I'm not certain we're going to win a trophy, and I'm not even certain how I'm going to get rid of Ashley. On that happy note, I'll even cut my foot.
Thanks to Chris Hill as well for his question, which was very similar. Jimmy Dixon, he'll have the last question before we get your predictions. And he said, it's a question for you, Malcolm. How much do you think you'd be worth these days, and would you like to play on the modern pitches nowadays?
Oh, the pitches are amazing. Oh, my word. Do you know they're better on the last day of the season than the pitches I played on were on the very first day of the season. They're quite incredible.
Could you put a price on how much you'd be worth, Mal? It's an awkward, isn't it? I mean, you look at the fees they get paid now, they're ridiculous. If Joe Linton's worth 40 million, you're definitely worth double that, Mal, in my eyes.
And the rest. and the rest. You know, when I was at Newcastle, I was 5 years here and I scored 138 goals. That was averaging about 27 and a half a season.
Yeah.
You know, what is that worth?
Exactly.
You know,
you can't put a price on it, can you?
You know, if they can pay who is it, Sanchez, £350,000 a week, you know, dear me, I think I'd be wanting a bit more than that for 27 goals a season.
It's time to put you on the spot, lads. Let's go for the predictions. So first of all, Malcolm, you Spurs away and then Leicester at home. Let's have your predictions for those two games.
Okay, Spurs. I think they're going to come and absolutely play Newcastle off the park unless there have been serious changes in attitude from Newcastle. And Spurs, by heavens, when they're playing, they love scoring goals, and I can see there being a 3 or 4-0 defeat for Newcastle. And Leicester, I said it earlier in this programme, and I'll say it again. In the second half against Chelsea, I thought Leicester were absolutely outstanding. Some of their movement, and it was so quick and decisive in the way that they went about it. They'll rip Newcastle apart. I have a horrible feeling for what's going to happen over the next few days. And I can see a heavy defeat by Tottenham, and I can see a defeat also by Leicester. Unless, because it's a cup and they start messing about with team selection. But even then, I don't think it's going to make a lot of difference, because I think the atmosphere and the spirit is all wrong in the Newcastle dressing room at the moment.
John, same to you.
4-0 defeated Spurs, I'm very sorry to say. I can't even see us scoring a goal, sadly. Leicester, the easiest prediction there is that it'll be a very poor crowd in terms of numbers. And it'll be a hodgepodge of a side we probably put out. And it depends on the side Bruce puts out and the side they put out. But the bottom line, I don't think Newcastle will go through against Leicester. They will get knocked out against Leicester. And I think they'll lose 4-0 against Spurs. And as I say, I'm leaving now to cut my throat.
Yeah, I've got to agree, lads. I think a resounding defeat against Tottenham at the weekend. I can only see 4 or 5 goals going past Newcastle without reply, and I don't see us getting through against Leicester. The worst scenario, of course, would be Newcastle United progressing in the cup for me. I think on this particular occasion, because I think ultimately if Newcastle get through, it just creates further issues for them. I think on the league. Well, I think Bruce will look at it like that. I don't know.
You get the result against Leicester, get into the next round, and all of a sudden the confidence start. And football is all about confidence. But at the moment,
There is
It's
zero.
Flat on the floor.
Okay, well, that's all from NUFC Matters tonight. Get us on Facebook and on Twitter, and join our channel. Subscribe to NUFC Matters on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, we're going to play out now with a local band called Just So. We'll see you next week.